Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this episode. We are continuing our conversation with Andrea, and we're talking about holistic coaching. We're talking about holistic coaching specifically, and within that there's things like confidence and resilience. So why should a business, thinking about a business as a thing, be both confident and resilient?
It's interesting that you say that thinking about a business as a thing.
I often do.
Yeah, because we do, don't we? We think of a business as, well, obviously it may have a legal entity of its own, but ultimately a business can't exist without the people that are in it. And it can't grow, it can't develop new products or services or whatever unless it's got people working in it. And unless those people are confident, they will find that they won't reach that growth as much as they would like. And that's why it becomes really important, because if you have people that are in your business that don't have that confidence, don't have that self-confidence, they're not making the connections that they need to make, or they're not networking in the way they need to network, or managing their staff or their team as well as they could be perhaps, or taking opportunities, or literally just doing stuff, taking action because of this invisible lack of confidence that they have, then confidence becomes a real issue.
And a barrier to growth, presumably.
And a very real barrier to growth.
So what are the kind of barriers to help people or to prevent people? I haven't loaded that question very well. But if someone has no resilience or little confidence, what are the barriers to them to prevent them from overcoming those barriers?
So
it's a poorly worded question, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think so. So if somebody has a real lack of confidence or a lack of resilience, then they will feel that there is a barrier there for them to do things. I think that's where you're kind of going with that. And so they may find that a particular type of action is outside of their comfort zone, or something that they're not comfortable with, or something they don't want to do, so they might avoid it, for example. They might not take the business down a particular path because it doesn't feel like something that they could do. So I'm thinking about some of the businesses that I work with and some of the barriers that they are facing. So it might be that they don't feel their business is big enough, when really they're saying that they don't feel that they're big enough.
Okay.
Or they might even, at extreme, say, well, I'm not that kind of business that could do that or apply for that, or I'm not.
It's an interesting choice of words, is it? I'm not that kind of business, with a very personal sense of that business being part of them.
And we do find that, even with some of the really larger businesses that I work with, when you're talking to the owners of the business, often they will mix up the business with themselves.
Interesting.
And so if they don't feel confident, then they don't take the business in a certain direction, or they don't want to make a particular decision.
Is that damaging for someone to think about themselves and business as the same thing?
Well, I don't think it's damaging. I think it has there's an unhelpfulness there.
Okay.
And when we do mix ourselves up with the business, then we do put all our own limitations on the business. They then become mirrored in the business. Because if we're not confident to take a business in a particular direction, or maybe take on a particular new product or service, or whatever it may be, if we're not feeling confident, then we're not going to take the action. The business can't take the action on its own because it's not real.
It's not a real thing, no. It feels like it probably is. It wants feeding like and really watering thing, and nurturing.
But if no one showed up to the business, if they all stayed at home, then nothing would happen in the business. So the business can only exist with the people that are in it.
So for those people, are there any simple measures a business owner or a boss or a manager can put in place to prevent their staff becoming stressed?
I think with stress, it's not necessarily a preventative matter. I think for me, and the approach and the understanding that I have about stress now, I think for many years I tried to prevent stress.
Seems like a logical thing to do.
So I would put strategies in place and do things in a certain order or in advance to try to avoid stress. And I think we can often think that those are helpful, and they are to an extent, but the difficulty is that life rarely follows that very strict pattern. We like to have, that is a part of our brain that really likes that pattern of behavior and the same things happening every day, and if this happens in this way, then I'm going to be okay. It likes that. However, that doesn't create a resilient way of living. And so instead of preventing stress, what I would suggest is that we enable people to see their own innate resilience, that actually they're okay in turbulent or stormy times, that actually they're okay and they have everything they need to navigate that, and that they will get through it and they will be okay. That requires a completely different approach, and for that person, in the way that I did as well. So I'm not preaching anything that I haven't done already myself, to understand how, as human beings, we create that experience of stress. And once we understand how we create that experience of stress, we can then create different experiences.
How can someone recognise that they're stressed? I asked that question because years ago, someone once told me that the physical side effects of being stressed, because there's a physical nature to it as well, is that it attacks the weakest part of your body, and everyone has a weak part of their body. So I know what mine is, and everybody knows what theirs is. Is that your experience too, or was that someone just telling me something that wasn't true?
Absolutely. There are different. I think fundamentally that's correct. Our body lets us know how much mental load we have on.
Yeah, it really does, though.
And there are a number of leading psychologists that have done quite a lot of research in that field. So our body is always telling us these little signals. I mean, my one is my back. As soon as my back starts to go, it's like, oh, I've got a lot going on upstairs. I'm going to have to just quieten down a little bit. Because this isn't about becoming some kind of Stepford wife or some kind of, guru where we're all kind of like, oh, we're all living on a lotus leaf, and really happy. We are human beings. We are meant to have a whole range of different experiences. Some of them we might enjoy more than others, but we are meant to have them. And our body is incredibly intelligent. Our whole system is very intelligent. So it lets us know when we're kind of staying in one experience for too long, especially a stressful experience. And the reason for that is very simple, because we have our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system. And we're meant to live in our parasympathetic nervous system. This is where our body works in all the right way. Everything is in balance. We're fighting infection. We're digesting food properly. All our hormones are in balance, all of that. When we're stressed, that's our sympathetic nervous system. And it essentially shuts down the systems that we don't need. So if we're being threatened by a saber-toothed tiger that is just about to eat us, there's absolutely no point in digesting this morning's breakfast. No point fighting off that flu bug that we've picked up, or indeed thinking about, reproducing the human race, because we're just about to be eaten. So I know that's a kind of extreme example.
No, perfect.
But that's pretty much what happens when we're in our sympathetic nervous system. And our body can tolerate that for about 20 minutes a day.
Okay. Is that fight or flight?
That's the fight or flight,
right,
or what we might know as the fight or flight.
That sounds like a long time, doesn't it, 20 minutes being chased by a saber-toothed tiger would be pretty intense.
That would be. But, if you think about the way that we live our lives at the moment, and certainly my old life and how I experienced my life, I would say I probably had 20 minutes in my parasympathetic nervous system, and the rest of the time I was pretty stressed.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's when we start to see why we are seeing a lot of ill health. We're seeing a lot of burnout. Our body is literally telling us on a moment by moment basis, can we just stop this now?
Yeah, leave it out.
Leave it out. Can we calm down? There is no saber-toothed tiger. You're imagining the worst thing that can happen and you're scaring yourself. Can we just stop? I'll send her a migraine. I'll send her a backache. I'll send her no, she's still not listening. Right, let's send even louder signals.
Yeah.
And so it is a feedback to us to really take notice.
It's about then from the business owner recognising that A, they're stressed or have stress, and B, that their staff might also be under a considerable strain. So it's about recognising that, isn't it? And then once you recognise it, you can then deal with it or put things in place to manage it better.
Absolutely. The analogy that I like using is, when you're driving down the motorway and you've got the rumble strips. So when we're stressed, it's like driving down the rumble strips. So a strategy might be, I'm driving down the rumble strips. Let's put some cardboard or something on the rumble strips so that we can still be driving down the rumble strips, but it won't feel like that. Yeah. But when we know how to drive properly, we just adjust our driving so we get back into the right lane.
Right.
And so if you're recognizing that you're stressed or that your team is stressed or a team member is stressed, it is about supporting them to help them understand how are they creating that stress. Yes, there may be things externally that aren't helping. So in my case, when I was a barrister, working 90 hours a week with a small family was never going to work, even if I really knew how to drive my mind properly. The fact that I didn't know how to drive my mind meant that I couldn't see that actually that was untenable.
Yeah,
and I couldn't see a way forward. So when we have this approach which looks at the internal, it enables us to then see with a really clear mind, with that kind of common sense head, well, actually, the way we're working just isn't tenable. It's not working, or we need to sort this out, or we need to sort that out. But all the time we're in a stressed state of mind, we'll just be reacting, and so we won't be making very good quality decisions.
What would you say to a business owner who sees stress as a badge of honour almost, in that if you're not stressed, you're not working hard enough? Because there are people like that out there, as I'm sure you know. What would you say to those people?
I think we've all been in that situation, and you say you've seen that a lot. I've seen that an awful lot as well, and I think it just comes from a very innocent misunderstanding about productivity. I think in years going by, maybe even like as far as like maybe a couple of 100 years ago, we thought that if we put in a lot of time and we put in a lot of effort, we'd get a lot of output. And I think we understand human beings a little bit better now, in that actually what is really key is that person's state of mind. We've all been in situations where we've had that feeling of flow, where our mind has been clear. We've not been particularly worried about anything or stressed. We're just getting on with the job. We're ticking off, going through our to-do list, and we get to like lunchtime and we're like, wow, I'm on fire. That hasn't been any effort, and it hasn't taken very, very long. Yet you've been the most productive you've been all week. Equally, we've had those times where our head has felt like porridge. We're tired, we're stressed, we're worried about 100 different things. We've got 3 things on our to-do list and they take forever. Yeah, so it's taken a lot of time. It's taken a load of effort because, quite frankly, making your first cup of coffee that day took a lot of effort. And our output has been really poor. The only difference in that has been state of mind.
Improve the state of mind.
Improve your state of mind, then, you really can move mountains.
Andrew, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. For anyone listening, watching, how can they find you?
So you're more than welcome to contact me on my website, which is andreamorrison.co.uk, or connect with me on LinkedIn. That'd be great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks ever so much. Good to see you again. And thanks everybody who's watching. We'll see you next time.